Hey, good morning, everyone. I thought I would review Chapter 6 in your business law textbook, Offer and Acceptance, really the heart and soul of contract law, a very significant aspect of this class, certainly. Another way of phrasing offer and acceptance is called the mutual meeting of the minds. It's where both the offeror, the person making the offer, and the offeree have essentially came to an understanding on all major aspects of the contractual obligations flowing between the two. The book starts off defining what an offeror and an offeree is. The offeror is the person who's putting, or the company or the entity putting forward a proposition. The offeree is the recipient. It's kind of common sense, but another reason why I like open book tests, especially online, it's obviously open book, is because sometimes we forget terminology even though we understand the underlying concept. A lot of legal um, educators in this area like to call them the promisor and the promisee. Uh, Either way, it's fine. We need to know that in order to have any binding agreement, the first element is just that, a mutual meeting of the minds, an offer and acceptance. And what are the elements of a valid offer? Well, one is it must be definite. And that sometimes it sounds good, but what does it mean? What do you mean definite? It has to have enough terms for an objective observer to understand what the obligations of the two parties are. So things like price, quantity, how many are we buying, when will be time of performance, who is doing what. If it's a service contract, what will they actually do to perform their end of the contract. We need details. Do we need a lot of details? Not necessarily. We need enough to know what the core components are for each party to perform their obligation. Now, I don't want you to say these are always absolute requirements, like price, for example. If I hire a plumber today, and a pipe broken in my basement, and the plumber comes over and I have to run out and pick up my kid, and he or she says, "Hey, I need to put in a 12-foot length of copper pipe. You got a crack in it. It's going to have to be replaced. It should take me about 2 hours." I say, "Hey, great, George, take care of it. I'll be back. Just leave me the bill." Do we have a binding contract? We never talked about price. Actually, we do. Now, what if the price is like $10 million? Some people will say, "Well, that doesn't seem fundamentally fair." In contract principles, customs, things in the, we'll talk about the Uniform Commercial Code someone as we get into sales. These things fill in the cracks on the foundation, like a spackle and a crack on a wall, if you will. We don't always expect to have every single detail. Price is usually critical, but it's not always. In that example, there would have been a binding agreement, but what would the actual charge have to be? It would have to fall in what we call the ballpark of reasonableness. It'd have to be maybe a little bit on the high end, maybe a little bit on the low end. Let's hope it's in the sweet spot so no disagreements occur. But generally speaking, courts would enforce that as a contractual obligation for the reasonable value in the industry for what a plumber would charge doing those kinds of things on a Saturday. Sometimes I need to get double time or something on Saturday. So I'm a little off on that. So it has to be definite. We need to know what the offeror is actually offering the offeree to do. Like when someone said, "Hey, Jim, I want you to come work for me for $70,000 a year." I accept. Well, we really don't have an offer. Why? Because what am I going to do for them? Am I going to be an attorney for them? Am I going to be an instructor at their college? Am I going to be doing lawn maintenance, painting like I used to do back in the day? We have to have more specificity. Does it have to be so nitty gritty in the detail? No. Long as parties can look at it, or a fact finder, a jury, or a judge can look at it and say, "I know what party A has to do, I know what party B has to do," and there's not a lot of ambiguity. There might be some subtleties that we can fix in through what? Implication. Remember that from a previous chapter, I hope, chapter 5. So one, it has to be definite. The next is it has to be seriously intended. That's pretty straightforward. But say I have a friend of mine who really loves my Roadster, convertible Roadster. He really loves it. It's old, but it's still nice. And I know he loves it. And what if, just to tease him, I say to him, but sounding serious, not intoxicated, not in any way seemingly like I'm trying to tease him, say, "George, I know you always love my car. I think it's time for me to upgrade or get something different. I'll sell you the car for $9,000 cash if you want it." Is that a valid offer? On that second element. Well, the first element, there's enough definiteness. My convertible Roadster, we have the price, $9,000. It seems to be enough in the offer to understand what the obligation is going to be. So what if George says, "I accept. I will come back this afternoon with the $9,000 cash." And then I start laughing and say, "I got you. I would never sell you this car. I'm going to keep it to the grave." Would he have a valid lawsuit against me? Well, we go through the elements. Was it enough? Was there enough definiteness in the offer? Yes, there was. Was it seriously intended? I can say, no, I was kidding. But objectively, would an objective observer of the events suggest that I had a serious offer made to George? It's not my personal secret desire to tease or to befuddle or to embarrass the other party. So therefore, there would be a binding agreement on those first two elements. Now, what if I did it overtly, laughing? I'll sell it to you for $500, and you got to give me a ride home. Obviously, that's overtly kidding. Therefore, there couldn't be a binding agreement. Related to joking, so it's objective standard. What did it look like objectively to the world, what the offerer was doing? Were they serious or weren't they serious? And it's not always about joking or being facetious. It's also about anger. And we probably met people in situations where they get so angry over something they have, and something's breaking, they can't fix it, and they just shout out that they'll sell it for X number of dollars in a fit of anger. That's not seriously intended. It's an emotional charge that the party really doesn't have a true voluntary desire to be bound into an offer. I've witnessed that one time before where I knew an owner of a bar and they were being sanctioned by the town because they allegedly overserved people, a lot of intoxicated people in the parking lot that night when the police came through. There were fist fights and people were vomiting everywhere. It was quite a scene. And they were going to lose their license for a period of time. And he defended, saying they didn't knowingly serve anybody with too much intoxicating liquor. They don't know how this all transpired. People may have drank in their cars. They may have come in extremely intoxicated, or they didn't show signs of intoxication. Well, the Board of Selectmen found against them. They suspended their liquor license for, I think it was 7 days. And I remember at the meeting, somebody goes, I'll sell that place right now for the first person that gives me $50,000. Sold. I want to get out of this crazy town. Was that a valid offer? Well, no, because there's two. One is it's not directed towards an individual or group of individuals, just wide open. It's actually considered what's called an invitation to make bids, which I'm about to move into. And second, it's made in a fit of anger. It's not seriously intended. And these are kind of, not always clear cases. And sometimes we have trials over that very aspect. Was there enough seriousness in the offer in order to bind the offeror? The next one, it must be communicated to the offeree. So, for example, if we're sitting around in my office and I said, you know what, I'm gonna offer Elmer, to sell my car to him for $10,000, and I even write it up and I have an envelope. It's right here. If I don't communicate it to Elmer, but one of you after leaving my office goes and tells Elmer, can he accept the offer now? No, because the communication has to be brought about by the offeree's voluntary assent. They either have to mail it, approach him, or tell one of you to communicate it to him or send him an email. The communication has to be brought about by the efforts of the offeree. And this relates to this too. Who can accept that offer? Can one of you sitting in my office when I say, hey, I'm thinking about selling my car? I will. I'm going to offer my car, my convertible roadster to Elmer for $9,000. Could one of you just stand up and goes, I accept? No, because we're free to do business with whom we want. The only party that can accept that offer is the offeree, the intended party. And there could be multiple intended parties, but it has to be only those that have the ability to accept. Now, people say, wait a minute, you can't discriminate. Well, I can't discriminate if I have a certain amount of employees or I impact interstate commerce on race, color, creed, national origin, religion, sex, sexual orientation, age. Things like that I can't discriminate against, but can I generally pick who I wish to do business with, as long as I'm not discriminating on those what we call protected classes? Yes, we're not really going over that in this class, but generally speaking, as a concept, you're free to do business with whom you wish, and you're free basically to do business with whom you don't, or not do business with whom you don't want to, as long as you're not discriminating because of certain classifications. So those are the three major elements. Has that definiteness or enough terms for us to understand what you're being obliged to do or not do? It has to be seriously intended, and then it has to be communicated to the offeree. Now we have a valid offer. It's pretty straightforward, I think, for the most part. Now, this one's going to confuse a lot of people. I don't test too much on it because it doesn't come up too much anymore because of what we call truth in advertising or consumer protection laws have really prevented sellers of goods or services from doing this anymore. And this is called invitations to make offers. Let's assume outside of my house right now, I put up a sign, for sale, beautiful home, blah, 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 blah. And I have some details on the sign, and I say $350,000. Is that a valid offer that anybody that sees that sign, because it's been communicated to them by the intent to show it to them, can they come in and say, I accept your offer, here's $350,000? Believe it or not, no. Because things that are designed to advertise to a broad spectrum of eligible people, like a catalog, a mass mailing, a billboard, a sign on your lawn. Those things aren't actually considered offers, even though they're seriously intended, even though they have definiteness, and even though they're communicated to somebody who's obviously understood the nature of the offer. It's not deemed an offer. It's called an invitation to make an offer. And so what a person can actually do is come to my house and goes, Jim, I'll accept the $350,000. I'll buy your house for $350,000. They're not really accepting my offer. They're making an offer to me, because what am I free to turn around and say? Well, let me think about it, because I just got an offer for somebody else for more than what I was asking, because they were fearful that somebody else might come in and swoop up the property. This doesn't come up too much. It comes up a little bit in real estate, but it doesn't come up too much more in the sale of goods. So, example, if I go to Walmart and they have a sign in the window, I don't know what Xboxes go for anymore, but Xbox, whatever it is now, I don't even know what iteration we're on, Xbox 2, $499. That, believe it or not, is not an offer. I can go in there with $499 plus the tax and say, I'll take one. But they're actually free to say, no, that wasn't an offer. We just wanted you to come in with the real price is $550, but we want to show you how fantastic the new Xbox is. That is an actual valid contractual behavior on their part. But most of you are going to be, wait a minute, no, it can't be. Well, it's illegal in the sense that that's called false advertising. It's part of a bait and switch against certain consumer protection laws. False advertising, all of those things would prevent that seller of goods from doing it. But in terms of contract law principles, they are free to basically deny the existence of an offer. And more importantly, and here's why. What if Walmart didn't have any left? Like, they had up that big ad, $499 for the new Xbox, and they sold the 30 they had in stock, and then you're number 31 and you come in and say, I accept, I'd like the Xbox, and they say, we're all out. Well, wouldn't they be in breach of contract if you accepted? It sounds like they would be. So we don't hold sellers of goods contractually bound when they're doing advertising. At one time in our country's history, this was actually a big part of a flim-flam or a bait and switch. You might have heard those terms before, because companies would actually do that. One famous one in New York used to have, and it used to be in my old textbook, they used to advertise, like, I don't know the name of flatware or China sets, but I do know one, Fallsgraph, for example. They would have an ad up, 8 serving size Fallsgraph complete set, $29. And people would say, oh my God, that's worth $200. And people come flocking in and they say, we want the 20. And goes, well, no, that was just to get you in here to discuss the beautiful Fallsgraph product and to sample it, look at it. And the real price is $199. Companies were notorious for doing that, but they're pretty much banned today under truth in advertising, fraud laws, things of that nature. It's clearly considered to be also unethical. And so companies don't want to lose goodwill by doing it. Auto manufacturers, especially used car dealers, were known for this. They'd advertise all these cars for unbelievable low price, and they didn't exist. And they would get you on the showroom floor or in the parking lot, and then they would try to wheel and deal you another deal that would be more beneficial to them. It's illegal under most circumstances in terms of fundamental contract principles. Any kind of things, you get a mailing, things in the catalog, things in window displays, those weekly ads you get from the different stores, that does actually not bind the offeror. They're not making an offer, they're making an advertisement that they have the right to reject, change, alter, or refuse. Shocks people. Please read the book on that one. I always ask them 1 or 2 questions because it's still the law. Now, this one's interesting. Duration of the offer. What if I said to my friend George, or Elmer, some of you have Elmer, many of your business students, you must have Elmer, Eubanks for some class. So I say, Elmer, I'll sell you my Roadster convertible for $9,000. I'm serious, right? I'm not joking around. I'm not intoxicated. I'm not in a fit of anger. And he goes, wow. Yeah, and he's eating lunch. He goes, I always loved that car. Let me think about it. It's okay, go think about it. How long does that offer stay open? It's a great question, and it's a question that's going to be on your test, probably in an essay, because it's not an easy answer. I can put in my offer the length of the duration of the offer. I can say, Elmer, this offer is open to you for 24 hours. Now, does that mean if I'm driving home later in a nice sunny fall afternoon, I put the top down in my car, and I'm playing my Kiss Alive 2 tape, and I'm feeling pretty good about the car, and I say, you know what? I can afford to keep this thing. I've changed my mind. Can I? Most of you say, well, no, you said you'd keep it open for 24 hours. But we're going to find that the offeror is the owner of the offer. And they've taken away this term because it sounds to relate to racism and slavery. But the owner, you would call the offeror the master of the offer. Therefore, they can dictate what it does and doesn't do and whether it exists or doesn't exist. So think about it. What has Elmer given me in exchange for keeping that offer open for 24 hours to him? Nothing. So the offeror has a right to revoke their offer, even though they said they'd keep it open for 24 hours. But I have to communicate that revocation to Elmer. Otherwise, if his acceptance beats me to my communication of the revocation, we'd actually have a binding contract and I'd have to sell him my car. So how long does an offer stay open for? If the offeror puts a term in there. This offer is good for 72 hours. This offer is good for 30 days. That's the death date on the outer end. Can it die before then? Yeah, I just said that. The offeror can always revoke the open of the length of time, the duration, anytime they want. They own the offer. So therefore, they can revoke it at any time, even if they promise to keep it open. There's a major exception. I'll get to it. Two major exceptions. I'll get to in a second. The other is this. A lot of times we don't put terms in. We're just not thoughtful. If I offer Elmer the car, and I think I'm pretty sure I want to sell it and it's definite in my offer. And he goes, let me think about it. Sure. Say it was a Friday afternoon, right? And then I said, maybe I'll see you Monday. Well, in COVID days, maybe we'll be back on the computer on Monday, right? Let me know. What if he doesn't let me know Monday? I didn't say by Monday. I just said, think about it over the weekend. Is the offer still open Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, a week, a month, a year? The answer is, if we didn't put a term within the offer is open till either I revoke it overtly by communicating it to the offeree or by a reasonable period of time. And I would think an offer on a car, a reasonable period of time would be certainly within a week. Some might argue even a few days. But what about this? It's more common sense type things. I'm not going to come to this kind of cup of coffee, but I go to Dunkin' Donuts and say I bought 4 cups of coffee, hot coffee in the the styrofoam or paper cups. And I come into the building and I expected 3 of my friends to be there. And one of them's not there. So I got this extra cup of coffee. Hasn't been touched, hasn't been altered. It's just, black cup of coffee and the sugar and the creams on the side. I make an offer to all people sitting in my class, 25 of you are sitting there, and I say, anybody want a medium black cup of coffee with cream and sugar on the side for 50 cents? But I don't say how long the offer is good for. Well, it's good until I revoke it, or it's good until a reasonable period of time passes, or it's good until somebody accepts it too, right? But think about it. It's a hot cup of coffee. Let's say it's a cool fall day or a winter day. How long should a reasonable period of time be? I would say probably no more than 30 minutes, right? Some of you might argue 10 minutes. The example I used to give in the summertime, you open up your lunch bag, you see that you have a liverwurst, I don't even know if people eat that anymore, liverwurst sandwich with lots of mayonnaise on it. It's about 95 degrees. It's in August, and we're in the middle of a blazing hot sun, and you're sitting at a picnic table, and you pull this out, this mayonnaise and liverwurst sandwich with cheese, and you offer to sell it to me, but you don't tell me how long the offer is good for. Well, you don't certainly expect me to come back in 3 days and say, I accept, I'll buy that liverwurst sandwich for $1. We probably expect that the offer is only open for a few moments. Same with a cool glass of milk in a hot summer day outside. We would think that would be a shortly derived offer because spoilage. So what's the answer to the test question? When the offer does not state the length of time in the offer expires when the offeror revokes it, or the reasonable period of time passes. And that's debatable. I don't always know the answer, folks. It's just reasonable under the circumstance. Now, one of the ways I can revoke it, if I'm the offeror, what if I offer to sell my car to Elmer, $9,000 on a Friday afternoon? What if I bump into Professor Cochran? I say, hey, what's up, Nick? What's going on? He goes, clean up my car. I offered to sell it to Elmer for $9,000. And Nick looks it over and goes, hey, let's take it for a ride. Let's go for a ride. He goes, Jim, I'll give you $9,500 for it right now. Do I have the power to sell it to him? I didn't offer it to him. He offered me. I am now the offeree. He's the offeror. I can accept that. I'm not bound to keep that offer open to Elmer, even though I promised to. And so what just happened? I just revoked my offer to Elmer by accepting the offer from Professor Cochran. You get the drift? It's common sense. Otherwise, offers would always be hanging out in the wind, and we'd have to keep track of all the different things going on. So the next one, besides reasonable period of time, revocation built within the offer, put the length of time, and it's open for 3 days, and act contrary to keeping the offer open, selling the product to some other person, giving notice that I'm revoking the offer to somebody else. Or what about this? I'm cleaning it up. I'm loving the thing over the weekend. My daughter is a bit of an artist, and she says, "Dad, let me paint like a, I don't know, like a scales of justice on the sides of the door, and with your name, and some kind of logo or something like that about your law practice." I say, "Yeah, go have at it." Now what have I done? I've done an act to the item that's inconsistent with my desire to sell. That acts as a revocation of the offer. I bedazzled my car. That shows my intent not to keep the offer open to the other party. Looking at the other ones in the book, and again, this revocation has to be communicated. Now, what if I offered to sell it to Elmer on a Friday, but Saturday I croak, I die? If the offer is still just pending in the wind, the offer dies with the offeree. Also, insanity. If I go insane over the weekend, the same thing would happen. Insanity prevents the parties from completing and consummating the deal. Therefore, the offer dies as well. And this is the big one. Rejection, and we'll get to counter offer in a second. Or we'll talk also about impossibility of performance. Bolt of lightning comes down. The subject matter of the contract becomes destroyed. Obviously, the offer dies with the destruction of the subject matter of the contract. What about this, though? Elmer looks at my car Monday morning. I drive it somewhere with him. He looks at it and goes, "God, I love this thing." He goes, "But man, your tires are bald." I said, "Yeah, they are. That's part of the reason why I'm selling it. You want tires for that thing cost a fortune." And he says to me, he goes, "You know what? I accept, provided you put on 4 new tires." Did he accept? No, what he did was something called a counteroffer. Anytime the recipient of an offer, the offeree, changes the elements of the offer in any material way, which is pretty low standard, my offer is actually removed from the board. It's completely taken off the table. All that's left is the counteroffer. And so what am I free to do? Well, I'm free to accept it, or I'm free to say, "No, Elmer, I won't do it." But here's what shocks people. So I said, "No, I'm not putting 4 new tires on it. It's part of the reason why I'm selling it, Elmer." And he goes, all right, I'll give you the $9,000 for the car in its current condition, in its current status. Do we have a deal? Most of you would say yes. But believe it or not, I am now in the position of saying no. Why? Because his counteroffer previously, by putting the 4 new tires on, what did it do? It actually removed my offer from the table. Now, in the heat of the moment, most people say, "Okay, we got a deal," right? Because that was the goal. I wanted to sell it for $9,000. I got the why would I possibly do it? But let's assume some time passed. Let's assume I had possibly other interests involved. It gives me the legal power, because a counteroffer was made, to walk away because my offer was removed from the table by the counteroffer. This has a very, very huge consequence in business. And so what could you do if, like, say you're Elmer, and Elmer really wants the car, but that doesn't mean he's foolish. Maybe he gets something more. Don't make a counteroffer. Make something called an inquiry. This will be on the test. What's an inquiry? What if Elmer said to me, he said, "Jim, I really love the car. I am not making you have to almost be this overt. I'm not making a counteroffer. I'm not trying to change the terms of your offer, but I was wondering if you would consider throwing 4 new tires on." That's a mere inquiry. My offer's still on the table. It's just an inquiry. And so I might say, "No, I'm not putting 4 new tires on Elmer. The offer is $9,000 in the car, and the condition is currently in." So therefore, Elmer can turn around and say, "Well, I'm not going to lose this opportunity now because I really want it. I was just hoping to do a little bit better," because those business professors, they always try to get another little something on any deal. He did the smart move. He just simply made an inquiry. And is it a fine line? Sure. So if I'm ever representing someone and they say, "I really, really want this thing, but I'd really hope they put in some new Anderson windows in the house," or "I wish they would really refinish the floors," or "I really wish they would remove the junk cars that are in the back of the farmland," or something. Be cautious. Don't make a counteroffer saying that's required. Just simply say, "I'm very much inclined to accept your offer, but I was wondering if you would consider doing X, Y, Z," because they might say yes. And then you could incorporate it into the actual contract. So what is acceptance? Acceptance is just that, a mirror reflection, sometimes called the mirror image of what the offer is. It has to be identical. And I used to show a film in class, and this woman would talk about a spider, or octopus doesn't look good because it's so slimy and floppy, but a spider on top of a mirror. all the elements of the offer have to be exactly the same as the offeree's position. Offeror and offeree have to be on the same exact page with all material elements. Then we have a binding agreement. And so it has to be communicated. That's obvious. Already went over counter offers, already went over inquiries, the manner of acceptance. This is no longer important, but at one time it was very important. So if I made you an offer in the mail to sell you my car, back in the old common law days, you'd have to accept it by writing your acceptance out in the mail. What is still important under the mailbox rule is acceptance occurs not when I receive the mail from you. It is considered accepted at the time the postmark comes from the post office on the outside of the envelope. Kind of obscure rule, but it's interesting to note it. But back in the day, if I offered you something in person via an in-person offer, you'd have to accept in person in some fashion. If I did it writing through the mail, you'd have to accept in writing the mail. If I did it, we don't even have telegraphs anymore, but back in the day, if we had a telegraph and I made the offer in a telegraph, you'd have to accept in a telegraph. Now we've changed the rules. And I don't know why we talk about history, because you can get screwed up and think you have to have the mirror image on the acceptance. You don't. Careful on this one. If I put a true and false question, make sure it says reasonable mode of communication. So if you called me up, made an offer to sell me your riding lawnmower for $2,000, could I accept it in an email or a text? Yes, I could. Because that's a reasonable mode of communicating in today's modern era. I could do it in mail too. I could do it the same. Some people say it's safest to use the same mode of communication that the offeror used as the offeree should use. I don't think that's necessarily true. But what's nice about an email, what's nice about a text, what's nice about a letter is you have proof. And most contracts are oral, and that's one of the dangers in it. If everyone agreed that the things were said and done orally, we wouldn't have a problem. But people are dishonest, or they don't accurately remember what happened, and they say, he never called me and said he accepted. And how do you prove it? It's a question of veracity and truthfulness. Testimonies, evidence, but whoever's more believable, and if it's equal, you didn't win the case. You've got to be the more convincing of the two parties. So very dangerous. So counteroffers, inquiries, manner of acceptance. I think I went over that this chapter. Please read it 2 or 3 times. Take time, not because so much the homework, as if you didn't already get the drift of, but very liberal grade on homework. The homework's designed to get you to really digest this material. But there's a lot of test questions on this stuff, and this is what you really want to understand for practical purposes, if not for nothing else. Otherwise, have a great day. I think I covered the core concepts of offer and acceptance. It is the mutual meeting of the minds. It is the heart and soul of contract law. Thank you.